My guest today is one of the best goalkeepers in Sun Devil soccer history. She held down the fort for Arizona State in the mid 2000s and has gone on to do great things in healthcare and educational settings. Kimberly Bingham. Kimberly, such an honor to be chatting with you today. And let's start out in the beginning. How did you first get interested in playing soccer and wanting to become a goalkeeper?
Well, Sam, that was a great introduction. Thank you. I feel so honored. I haven't talked soccer in a super long time, especially coaching wise, yes, because I've done coaching quite a bit, but not about like 20 years ago. We're getting close to 20 years that I've been on the field at Arizona State, which seems crazy. But funny story. So I actually ended up being a goalkeeper because I was going to be cut from my club team, my U10 club team. I was not the best field player and I was going to get cut. And I really wanted to play with all my friends, and we didn't have a goalkeeper. And so my club coach told me that if I practiced really hard at being a goalie because we needed one, that he would, one, I'd get to make the team. And then two, I could play like half the time in the goal and then half the time on the field, which was all lies. I ended up being only in the goal. But yeah, I ended up being the goalie because I sucked on the field and they were going to cut me. And that's how I ended up there. It obviously worked out very well. And then I think kind of goalkeeping kind of runs in the family. So like my brother's a goalkeeper as well. And so it all worked out. But that is how I ended up in the goal. I sucked on the field and they were going to cut me.
Where did the interest in soccer specifically, like where did that originally start?
So my parents say I start that I was young and we were driving by like a school one day that had a field out front and that there was a bunch of kids playing soccer and I told them that I wanted to play. I was probably 5 or 6 at the time because I started playing young. I would think I was on like a U6, U18. And so that is because I asked them, I was like, how did I get signed up? Nobody in the family had played soccer. And she just said, we were driving by. You said you wanted to play. So I found a rec league and I signed you up for it.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Did you have like a particular, no, I'm not sure if you did, but did you have a favorite soccer team growing up?
Okay. So to totally date myself, as you mentioned, I played in the early 2000s. And so I was born in 84. And I think, like most of my colleagues who were and teammates who were born in that area, I was coming through club soccer in the UNC dynasty, where they were the powerhouse and they controlled, you know, the national championships. And so I think every kind of youth player at elite level, always kind of dreamed of going to UNC at the time. And so that was definitely a team that I followed like college wise. All of us were kind of obsessed with the women's national team because that was also kind of, in my opinion, kind of like the golden era of the women's national team where you had, Mia Hamm, Brianna Scurry, and Brandy Chastain, and like where women's soccer was really coming to the platform. And so we were always watching the US women's national team game and cheering them on. And then kind of as I was getting into college, UNC is still a powerhouse to this day, but the volume of good quality female soccer players was increasing and they obviously can't all go to UNC. And so as I was getting into college, that was kind of the first time that you really saw other teams starting to compete with UNC. And so then I got interested in rather than kind of playing for the powerhouse, I became interested in kind of being a part of a program that was building and had an option to kind of like make a run for it and do kind of, first time things, for those programs, which is kind of how I ended up at Arizona State.
When it came to that decision to go to Arizona State, like what would you say were the main factors in that decision?
So to this day, I think if you asked a lot of the players that were in my class, in the class above, like Mons, who you chatted with, I think that you would find for a lot of us that Mike Calise, who was our assistant coach at the time, was a big reason in how a lot of us ended up there. I still keep in touch with Mike to this day. He is a coach now at Harvard. He is an excellent recruiter, probably the one of the best, if not the best in the country. Um, and so he was a big player in getting a lot of us to Arizona State. But then when I came in, I also had a lot of teammates who were older than me, like Mons. Brittany Cooper, who I had played with on regional teams and national teams, who had joined Arizona State. And so I already had teammates before I got there, and they were players that I really respected, admired, good friends of mine. And so when I came to Arizona State, Mike Calise and Ray Leon was the head coach at the time. But Mike really headed up recruiting. I mean, they rolled out the red carpet. Um, and then I had my teammates there and my friends there, and it was impossible to beat that recruiting experience that I got at Arizona State. So like I went there and it was a wrap. I mean, the school and the athletics and everything that was offered to the athletes, and then you add just an incredible recruiting trip and friends, and a building program, and it was a no-brainer for me.
Mm. What was the transition to life in college like for you?
Yeah, so I think the same thing that I would tell a lot of my players that I coach. So I've kind of kind of dabbed in and out of soccer, like post playing. Um, More recently, I was doing private trainings and I was training goalkeepers who were all preparing going to college D1 schools. And I told them this because it was also my experience that no matter what somebody tells you what Division 1 athletics will be like nothing is going to prepare you for it until you get there. Like when you get there, there's nothing you can say of like, oh, you're busy and the balancing or whatever. Your freshman year is kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. There's nothing like it. And so regardless, you can be a high level athlete, play a bunch, know people, be good with your, be very scholastically inclined. But when you get to your freshman year, it is a different grind and it's a different pace. So it's challenging. Um, but definitely having a great support system between your coaches and programs, and your teammates definitely makes the transition easier. But that freshman year is incredibly challenging. I remember coming home for winter break and people were like, "How was college?" And I was like, I don't even know because soccer is a fall sport." And I was like, I haven't really experienced it because you get there early and you're off and running.
I believe I was looking at, at your freshman year. In sort of the back half of that season, no, you start getting a lot of action. So getting that experience in your freshman year, how important was that, to really lay the groundwork for the following 3 years?
Yeah, so and I came in as a freshman. I didn't play the first part of the season because I had broken my foot. So I had come in, I was hurt. Um, and Kelly Fitzgerald was a junior at the time and a goalkeeper as well, and an incredible just human and teammate. So there was definitely some conversation of kind of like when I could get back on the field. Was it going to be worth redshirting? Because I was hurt and like, am I going to be able to get enough of the season where, it'll be worthwhile? Um, so Kelly was a great teammate, a great upperclassman, and also supportive, even though we were competing against each other. And so that was really why the first part of the season I wasn't playing. I had a broken foot. As soon as I got clearance to get back on the field, which I think was kind of around the time that the preseason games ended, I was back for Pac-10 to date myself. And so I was able to get back on the field with that and playing with some of those upperclassmen like Amy Lapilbit was fantastic. That was my only season I got to play with her, and she's a phenomenal, phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, right on, right on. What do you think were the key factors to your success in college?
So I think with college sports, definitely the framework that my parents kind of set, and then even my club team set, um, was really important for allowing me to like juggle all of the things that college sports, throws at you. I think that, you know, time management, I also say being gritty, um, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, are all really important things to be successful your freshman year. And my club team, and then also, especially my mom, really reinforced those things before I got to college. And so I felt like I had all of the skills that I needed to be successful. It was really up to me because I played on multiple teams before getting to college, and it was a juggling act then. And so I learned time management. I learned to be gritty. my mom was a big proponent on schoolwork getting it done and figuring out ways to get it done. So that meant if it was, in the car to and from, um, you figure out a way to get it, to get it done. And there was a high expectation in our home that perform and you behave certain ways. And so I felt like I had those things when I got to college. My parents weren't there, but your teammates and your coaches really become an extension of your family and hold you accountable to those things.
When you're the goalkeeper, there are stretches, of these games where, where the action is at the other end.
Yeah.
And you have to stay locked in, throughout the whole game. Like how are you able to do that?
So I think if you look at any high level goalkeeper, um, while you may not the game may not be necessarily right in front of you, or you may not be actively participating, for instance, like catching the ball or making a dive. I always say that the best game a goalkeeper ever plays is the game that they never touch the ball because it tells me that they are proactively like managing and organizing their defense. And so while I may not be involved in the game with my feet or involved in the game with my hands, like I am 100% involved with managing that back line and organizing and seeing the bigger picture and moving people into it. So yeah, when you watch high level games, you'll see like, is that goalkeeper involved? Are they constantly talking? Are they rotating and moving their back line? Are they communicating? And that is really an important part to keeping the keeper, tied into the game.
Are there any particular games, like specific games that stand out to you the most from your time at ASU?
So my best friend from youth, from elementary school, who was also on my club team, and then also we went to college together. We were roommates by our freshman year, Katie Mahoney. Um, she is still to this day is the nicest human walking around the face of the planet. Um, and so, your personalities too, a lot of times like your off-field personalities come onto the field. Some people have kind of different ones, but she is just the nicest, sweetest, greatest human on the face of the planet, right? And I remember a game we were playing on the road. I believe we were playing at Pepperdine. I think we were playing in Pepperdine. We were in Southern California at the time. And I remember I came out for a ball. I don't remember if it was a cross or kind of a breakaway, but I came out to get the ball. I got the ball, but I got like wrecked pretty good in the process. And I remember hearing her scream angrily, "Get off my goalie!" And it was so out of character for her. Like I just couldn't have like I just started laughing. Um, and I had another kind of similar experience with one of my best friends, Juanita Lawson, who was a defender, and I actually was yelling at her during a game. And she just turned around and laughed at me, like because I had a very strong personality on the field, and a lot of people didn't really challenge it. And then my best friend just turned around laughing at me, kind of like, girl, get for real. And so those are those moments that are like outside the game that you just still remember, even the stuff on the road, the fun times that you have with your teammates that you guys still, chat about when you get together.
Yeah, for sure. Were there any specific opponents that you really liked going against?
I mean, I think, like any good Sun Devil, we hate playing like U of A, like is absolutely it doesn't matter how good or bad U of A is that year. Like playing against U of A is absolutely like a rite of passage, like that every Sun Devil hates. And I don't know, for me particularly, UCLA just really did something for me. Like I just could not stand the UCLA team. It was always a great game, well stacked team, and always a battle. But there was something about just like the UCLA vibe that was always just a little like, oh, we got to mess them up, sort of thing. UCLA was probably one of the other teams I just didn't care for. And I actually have a friend who went to UCLA, played on the men's team, and I talk crap to him about it all the time.
That's great. That's great. How do you think you grew as a leader at ASU?
So I remember very clearly the end of my sophomore year um, was when I became captain. And I remember Mike Khaleesi had not left at the time. He was still there. And I remember Mike telling me um, that I was going to basically have to figure out how to um, get different types of personalities to respond. That kind of my baseline way of being was not going to elicit a response from everybody, and that moving into that leadership role, it was now my responsibility to figure out how to connect with people, and how to get them to respond, and kind of like my responsibility as a leader to learn and grow and change rather than just kind of being like, this is my way of being and you have to meet me here. And that was really an eye-opening kind of moment for me. And I think also something that I've taken with me into other avenues of my life, whether being an educator, being a coach, being a nurse, being a mom, is that like, you know, where and how you show up and is comfortable is really not how everyone's going to respond. So like if I'm trying to get and elicit a certain response, I may have to take a different approach. And that was could not have rung more true. There was definitely, you know, mistakes that I made being a captain. It was definitely a learning process, but it was a huge opportunity for growth. And he was right. He was 100% right.
Outside of playing soccer, what were your favorite things to do during college?
I was such a loser. I in college did not do anything other than soccer and honestly my schoolwork. Like it was kind of like I was the kid that went to class every day. I sat in the front row, like in the front row of class. Probably my most common pastime, if I wasn't in class or on the soccer field, was you could find me at some new coffee spot studying. Like that was kind of like if I had a study, I was never really in the athlete area and I wasn't at the house, I would go find a coffee spot. You know, drink coffee, stay up late, and study. There really wasn't much time for anything else, and I was incredibly focused on both those things, on sports and soccer at the time. And so I really did not have any hobbies, which also made the transition when I got done playing, made it really hard because when 20 something of your years of your life has been, you know, really focused on these two things. And the first time you have freedom to like explore, like what else is it that you would like to do? I didn't really know.
Did you ever go to any of like the ASU football games?
So being a fall sport, it was hard. It was really hard. You know, football's fall, we're
Hmm.
fall. Volleyball, I believe, was fall sport at the time too, and so um, it's great to go. Football games are always fun. You know, I went to a few. Sometimes we get lucky and catch the Thanksgiving rival game with U of A. But it was definitely hard because your schedules, you know, don't line up, and so um, you know, maybe you catch a game during the season, you know, but with soccer, we were playing Friday night and Sunday afternoon, and then Saturday is a recovery day, but you're still on the field. And so fall sports, it was really hard. Maybe we caught one, maybe a game, maybe two. Um, but it was challenging. A lot of times it was watching the games on a TV screen.
Do you remember any of the coffee spots that you would
Oh
hang
my
out at?
God. Oh, there was one on Mill Avenue that I went to all the time, and I cannot remember the name, but I can remember sitting in the window. There was one in downtown Tempe on Mill Avenue. It was open late, which is why I usually would go there. It was close to campus, but then I moved further away from campus. So like, you know, Starbucks was great, but I used to drive to go to that one because it was open late, probably because it was right by campus. And I cannot remember the name. It was like a local mom and pop spot.
Oh, nice, not nice, nice. Those are the, you know, I tell you, those are the best coffee shops, or like you said, those mom and pop shops.
Yeah.
Those just hit different.
Yeah, I don't. I'm now when we get done with this, I'm gonna have to look to see if it's still there. It probably isn't because that was 20 years ago. Um, Tempe has changed so much. When last time I went back, I couldn't believe how much it's grown.
Yeah. That's yeah. I've heard that from a lot of people you know of how like I mean I just graduated in May, but I've heard from so many people
I
that it's
know.
changed so much in such a short period of time.
Yeah. So one of my teammates, she is still in the area, and so I was going back to visit, and I was talking about meeting up with her, and she mentioned like meeting up in like downtown Gilbert, and I was like, downtown Gilbert. Where's the other? Like downtown Chandler. I just started laughing. I was like, there's downtowns now. Like, I was like, what? There used to be nothing out there, you know? Like the only spots were Mill Avenue, and then basically Scottsdale, like Scottsdale Road, and then a little further out. And then there was a little pocket off like Ray Road. But the highways didn't fully connect. You couldn't fully drive the loop. Um, Down by the water by Tempe was not developed and all built up. It's amazing how much growth has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what would you say is the overall impact that Arizona State has had on your life?
Well, I will say, like, once a Sun Devil, always a Sun Devil. And so I feel like meeting other Sun Devils is like an instant connect. And in fact, funny, I moved to Atlanta. And when I got to Atlanta, I saw somebody one day that had a maroon and gold sweatshirt on that said ASU. I was like, oh my God, another Sun Devil, Arizona State, right? Like, go Devs. And so I was like, "Oh, you went to Arizona State?" And they looked at me crazy and they were like, "No." And I was like, "But you're like your sweatshirt." And they were like, "ASU." And I was like, "Yeah, Arizona State." And they were like, "No, Appalachian State University." And they ironically have like the same kind of colors. And I started laughing and I was like, "Absolutely not. That is not the same." Um, so yeah, so like once a Sun Devil, always a Sun Devil. There's a network built in there. Obviously when you meet people, there were so many resources that Arizona State provided. And I feel like too, like even being able to, if you ever needed anything, circle back to. Um, the college degrees that I got opened a lot of doors down, down the way. And so like I love being signed up. I've gotten several other college degrees since leaving Arizona State, but when people ask me like what my alma mater is, I claim none of the other ones. Like I'm like, no, I like my alma mater is Arizona State. It doesn't matter where my master's degree is from. I was like, no, I just like that's just a degree. I didn't like I'm not really one of those. Like, I'm a Sun Devil.
Yeah, right on, right on. As you've been talking, during this, you've also coached soccer.
Mhm.
How did coaching first start for you?
So I think when I got done playing, I was really burnt out. I didn't want anything to do with soccer. I wanted to get like as far away from soccer as possible. I was tired and I was burnt out. And it was funny because I kept like people would reach out to me all the time about coaching soccer, and I just really wasn't that interested. So I first started doing some club stuff. I wasn't interested, but I got out of college and really just needed kind of a job and some money. The things that I had been applying for weren't really working out, and so it was really just kind of an interim. Um, and then I've kind of just ebbed and flowed in and out of it. It's always kind of been like if I in a transition point or somebody's asked, Mike Calise has called me. I can't tell you how many times about a variety of opportunities. I will get phone calls from him. I've gotten so many phone calls from him about coaching opportunities. Um, but most recently, when I moved to Atlanta and moved out there, and I was out there for grad school, that was really how I needed a additional income, and club soccer is now a business. And so I had some opportunities very easily, opportunities that I had kind of either reached out and that I had kind of looked for to coach because it was easy that I could be in grad school and coach a couple nights a week on the soccer field and make some good money. And there's not a lot of female goalkeeper coaches, and clubs need goalkeeper coaches, and so um, it's a overwhelming need, in the sport. And then after spending in Atlanta, like about a year or two doing some stuff with Top Hat, I transitioned into doing privates. And so at that point, I'd been out there for a while. My name and kind of like just my coaching skill set kind of spread very quickly. And so I just would run privates, and goalkeepers, mostly girls, but all high level youth athletes who were all looking to go, who are all had the ability and were like on the path to go to D1 schools. And then I stepped away coaching. So my daughter is 8. So about the time I started nursing, which was about 4 years ago, is when I started, which is kind of the last time I really coached. Because I just needed to be able to allocate that time to her instead of being on the field.
What were your favorite parts of coaching?
Okay, so hands down, my favorite part of coaching is my favorite part of being an athlete is the relationships that you form with people. So all of those youth athletes that I started coaching when my daughter was a newborn. I had her on the field with me strapped to my chest coaching, and she was probably 8 weeks old. As just, a single mom trying to figure it out and make ends meet. And so she was strapped to me. She was 8 weeks old, and I was out on the field coaching with her. And so all of those youth athletes who were either 11 and 12 at the time, 11 and 12 upwards to like juniors in high school at the time, they all went on to be D1 athletes. Some of them have even since graduated from college. My youngest ones that were like 11 or 12 at the time are now in college. One of them is at Mercer. And I keep in contact with them, or I will get text messages from them. The one that was a Mercer was home for summer break, and sends me a message and like, let's go grab dinner and just to like catch up with them and talk about life because soccer is going to end. And then like what's going to be the next step. But the fact that, those relationships that you form on the field go further. So that's my favorite part about coaching is to see like what my athletes do after and get to know them as humans, which has been so much fun.
How did you get started working in healthcare?
Oh, that is a non-linear path to there. Um, so I went to grad school. I was getting ready. So I went to grad school. And then while I was in grad school, I was working as a personal trainer, and I met some females who were firefighters and also trainers. And I was getting ready to finish up grad school, and I was actually kind of terrified that the same ththing was going to happen that happened to me when I was an undergrad. So when I was an undergrad, I came out in like 2008. The economy was really bad. I had a really hard time finding a job. Came out with 2 degrees, did all the things I was supposed to do, and really could not get any traction. And I was terrified I was going to now have a master's, and was going to have the same thing. So I met these two people, women who were trainers and firefighters, and I was kind of like, well, that seems kind of cool. You only work how many days a week? As an ex-athlete, I like a good physical challenge. I said, why not? So I actually became a firefighter and a paramedic. Um, Best, most fun job I've had. I loved it. I wish I would have done it sooner and younger. I still would have ultimately have left for all the same reasons that I did. But when I got into that, I really enjoyed the medical side. That was really, um, I loved the like intellectual challenge of it. I love the pace of it. I really enjoyed it. And so I was working as a medic in high volume area in Atlanta. And so I had planned to actually go to PA school. That was my plan. Transition from the fire department, go to be a PA. And then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And I was like, well, that can't happen. And so I pivoted into higher education for a mom job. And then and then I had them pay for my nursing degree because I was able to bridge my medic over. And so that was kind of my very like non-linear. I go from being a firefighter to a professor for about 6 years while I'm in nursing school. And then when I finished that, I fully transitioned into nursing.
Hey, right on, right on. No, I thought this was super cool. I saw that at one point you were a firefighter paramedic. I gotta
Yeah.
ask, what was that like?
Um, it was I loved it. It was chaos. There's a big component of teamwork in it because you not you live with these people, once every 3 days, but you operate as a team. Um, you're doing things that are definitely like physically challenging, mentally challenging, and kind of have to be like ready game time at any point. So there was a lot of overlap from the things that I enjoyed and excelled at playing high level sports. So it's not uncommon to see athletes, kind of gravitate towards that field. Um, but there were also things about the field which were ultimately kind of like why I left. Um, there's a lot of like kind of archaic ways of being in that world. And my biggest thing was I I want to enjoy what I do for work. It's helpful when what I do, like when my personality, my skill set aligns with that because it makes it easier. But ultimately, like I don't live to work. I work to live, and I want to have my life outside of work is what is most important to me. And I saw the people that I worked with be there at the department 20 to 30 years, and their families didn't know them because they weren't there. Like I was like, I know you more than your wife. And I didn't want that to be my home, you know. Great job, super fun job. Like I said, I wish I would have done it right out of college. So I would have done it a little bit longer, but I still would have transitioned on.
What are the most important things that you've learned from your experiences in healthcare?
Oh, um, regardless of people's political opinions, I think that every single person who works in healthcare in this country, regardless of what they do, regardless of whether they are EVS, they are a physician, they're a nurse, whatever their role may be. I'm excluding administrators because that's very different. But the people who are on the ground doing and actually providing the care will tell you that healthcare in this country is a trash can on fire, regardless of how you access it, what you're accessing it for. It's a disaster. And I don't think really any of us know what the answer is, but I know the system is fundamentally broken and horrible. Um, and I've had conversations with friends. I was like, I don't know what the answer is. I think like the only thing I kind of like gives me a little optimism when I go to work is I feel like if I can show up for patients how I would want somebody to show for me if I was the patient or my mom was the patient, that like while the system is disastrous, like maybe I can have a positive impact on this one person in this one tiny event because can't change the system, but I could change this encounter that this one person has that then maybe has a snowball effect for them.
Yeah, yeah, of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, and in addition to everything, you know that we've been talking about here, you're also a mom. What's that journey been like for you, as a parent?
um, you know what, Sam, similar to your freshman year of college sports, no matter what anybody tells you about it, you're never going to be ready. You're not going to know what to expect. Um, it too was like drinking out of a fire hose. Being a mom has hands down been the most challenging thing I've ever done, but also the most rewarding. Now it's kind of like I can't imagine life without her, but um, it's been challenging. Like any parenthood in general, regardless of whether you have a partner or not, is incredibly challenging. But um, it also, I think, has reinforced for me like the importance of um, being really mindful of how you carry yourself and how you move because kids are paying attention to what you do, not really what you say, right? So, if I tell my daughter she can be and do anything in this world, take chances, go for it. Failure is part of the process, but then she doesn't see me doing it, then she's going to be like, she's not going to learn that. And so it's become really important that, the characteristics and the things that I want to reinforce for her that she sees her mom doing, because that's what she's going to learn from.
Hey, absolutely, very well said. And just last question here,
Yeah.
as a former student athlete, what is the biggest piece of advice that you have for student athletes that are
Mhm.
currently in college?
You don't have to have it all figured out. Nobody has it figured out. That's like the joke of life. I used to tell my college students this as I was their professor, because I would hear some of them be like, "Oh, you have it figured out," and I would laugh, and I'm like, "No, nobody has it figured out. Nobody has it figured out." And the few people who might seem to have it figured out because maybe they followed in a path like family has a family business and so they're supposed to take over the business and so they've checked all the boxes, taking over the business, getting married, having kids, whatever the boxes are. um and they seem to have it figured out. They're probably miserable, like they're probably absolutely miserable. And so nobody has it figured out. So like all the preconceived notions that you have of like I'm done with college, I'm this age, um nobody has it figured out. We leave this world not having figured out like And so finding some way to enjoy the process, I think letting go of a lot of that makes a difference. Even now I tell people like, and a lot of times in nursing, I work with some of my colleagues are much younger than me. They're maybe in their 20s. They went to school, they did nursing, and they're like straight out, right? So they've done this very linear path. And I feel like I've lived 10 lives. And I was like, this can work for right now. That doesn't mean it has to be here forever. It's not going to be here forever. And that would be like a really boring story. Like, strive to be the crazy lady in the nursing home that everybody wants to talk to because they took chances and had great stories. Nobody wants to talk to the person that checked all the boxes and did all the things. It's like such a boring story. And you don't do anything great. Nothing great will come of playing it safe. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like, take the chances, fail, screw up, and like make a great story. And if it doesn't work, then it's a redirect, which is what I tell my daughter. Like, failure is part of the process. I've been redirected so many times. Um, but I'm so thankful for it because also like I am a better mom and a better nurse because I did these other things, because I was a professor, because I was a firefighter, because I was a paramedic. Like, it's not a failure that I'm not still doing those things. It's an asset to where I am now. So like, you don't need to figure it out. Don't figure like you don't have to. Nobody's going to. Like, and there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure, especially on athletes when they have had everything figured out at every stage. The transition out of that is incredibly hard for everyone. Whether that comes right after college or whether that comes after professional sports, that is a really hard transition that is not talked about enough. Um, Not talked about enough. I know that, sometimes people also struggle with some mental health with that as well, like with periods of depression and stuff. Like, they don't know what to like. It's a hard transition. It's a really hard transition.
Thank you so much for giving me
Yes,
some of your time today. Being able to talk with you is truly an honor. So thank you so much.
absolutely, Sam. Thank you for having me. I'm flattered that anybody was interested in talking to me about anything pertaining to soccer that was 20 years ago. So it was fantastic being here, and thank you for letting me relive some of my Sun Devil memories.